Hi, everybody. Today we're another session of us talking about MCP UI apps with Ray and JC. I'm Toby. Before I'm CEO on Cool Design, where we try and really understand what's going on in this space. And I'll hand over now to Ray.
Hi, I'm Ray Deck. I'm founder at State Change AI, and work on the hardest 5% of building for and with AI. And oh boy, do these MCP apps really fall in that category of being challenged both on the UI front and on the technical front. So I'm really excited to get to be here with you today, Toby and JC. And JC, could we quickly get your intro, and we'll get into it.
Sure. Hey everyone, I'm JC, product designer and developer, and these days just a guy interested in MCP apps and everything revolving around that new stuff. So today what I have for you is an interesting app that everyone knows. So it's OpenTable, and they released the app along with the initial bunch of GPT apps, right? So I tested it a couple of weeks ago, and I was able to test a couple of the features, the main features, but then some others seemed to fall short. So that was an interesting bit of research. And these days I check back, and there's been some progress. So I think it'll be worth me going through what we saw a couple of weeks back, and then do a live demo testing of the app today.
That's
so
cool.
If that sounds good, I'll be sharing my screen and we'll dive into it.
Yes.
And we go from here. All right, so OpenTable, if we try to remember our taxonomy, it would be bucketed within the execution apps. So in this case, I won't go into detail in each of the modes of work, especially because, as I said, it was pretty limited at the time, and they've improved. So we'll just jump onto it. But basically, the main issues that I saw when testing the app, or the main things that were surprising to me, were that, especially on the Explore side of things, when I'm really exploring this app and I'm trying to get recommendations for a nice place for a dinner tonight, the app just chose to surface UI widget, which in this case is a carousel of different restaurant options. Well, first of all, they were not in my location, so they seem to be probably in New York or San Francisco. So it doesn't know that I'm in Spain, more specifically in Barcelona. So there were a couple of things here that failed in the experience. So those that was surprising for me. Then when I tried to dive deeper into trying to customize the app to work for me, for my use case, I was trying to basically say, okay, I want something Italian, not too expensive, near me. It didn't seem to pick it up, right? So it just kept the focus within New York, or the city it chose beforehand, and then just use the same UI element, but just with a narrower focus based on my prompt. But again, nothing really useful here. So at this point, I think I was just trying to go through the different modes. But again, at this point, I had already, as a user, looking for a real end goal for my experience here, I would have already abandoned, right? So I think what's interesting is, if we jump into the app today, is we're gonna see how it's changed. Because one of the things that I'm finding as I keep testing the ChatGPT apps is that in a matter of 1-2 weeks, a lot of these apps are changing. They are changing in terms of the UI they are showing, in terms of how the UI is interacted with, but also how GPT interacts with the UI, right? So how the whole MCP app is presented to the user. So here we can see that there's basically no conversation happening. It's just defaulting to showing me the UI widget in a different shape, but it's just the same. And I have no way of knowing what's going on. What am I supposed to do? For example, here the only CTA is for me to click on the card, and then it will take me to the website where I can basically restart my booking session. So let's jump into.
Well, can I just ask a question actually? Well, the question actually great, I think. So just my understanding on this. So the way that the MCP app's working, effectively it returns the JSON data with, well, that's the data part, with the UI. And I think that my understanding is that the MCP server can basically choose what UI to return. It doesn't have to return a stepped UI. So I think effectively what's happening here in this instance, or at least in this, when you looked at it before, is it's got one way of displaying UI. And so whatever it returns any JSON, it just gives it what it's got. And I think, is that correct, Ray? There's no restrictions on what UI. You don't have to predefine what UI you're going to return. You can basically return any UI along with the JSON. Is that correct?
Well, sort of. When JC made his call, right? That triggered the AI to run what's called a tool, right? Which is basically like a function. So oh wait, JC wants to go make a reservation, and OpenTable has a tool called called identify reservation candidates or something, and then as part of that tool, it would then emit some kind of answer, right? Some kind of structured data coming out. This gets to your point about the JSON. And that can come in one of, basically there are three things it can emit, right? One is sort of straight text, right? Like there's stuff that would then be used to read. Other is structured data, which would then be used by the AI to decide how to do things next. And the third is like privileged data that would only be sent to your to the UI app, right? So there's a sort of special channel of metadata that can go for that. The second thing it's going to do, though, is it's going to identify that, like, as a result of this tool call, you should really go check out this, what it calls a resource. So the second thing is called a resource that is historically was a little bit less used. It was like a place to sort of get like context, kind of thing we might use for skills nowadays. But now, its intent is kind of this, which is to the resource, specify it using a URL, because what it's supposed to do is basically give you web content. So the resource has the job of giving you the HTML, the JavaScript, CSS, whatever. And because it has that HTML, JavaScript, and CSS, in there, which then what the AI does, GPT does, is takes that package and puts it into a frame that then is just sort of sitting inside here. And then that code can be sent through, window level messages. Oh, wait, and here's data from the tool, right? So kind of what time you load it does all those things at once, right? It says, oh, you've got this resource, or you give me a resource URL, I'm going to display that. And then I'm going to emit into that resource the data from the tool, right? Either data that was shared with the AI, which is sort of the channel number 2 I was talking about before, or data that was not shared with the AI, right? Which is sort of that privilege channel I was talking about. The fact there's nothing coming in from the rest of the text for ChatGPT makes me think that this sort of is just using a privileged channel, which is discouraged, but it's possible. So there's sort of the way it thinks of in these two parts, right? One is the resource, like what's the app that's going to be displayed? Kind of like the same thing you do when like go open up, an app in a web browser. It's just like that same payload is what we're talking about that comes through from the resource. And then there's a second part, which is being pushed into it, which is the result of the tool, that is JC asking for, let's find a nice place for dinner, apparently 3,000 away from him. And that's the two pieces are what need to work in concert for the MCP app to be successful, right? And I think part of what we're seeing here is a combination of kind of a simplistic way of handling the UI, at least as of a couple of weeks ago. I can't wait to see updates, JC. And then second is the way it then emitting the data, right? So to your point, like there's the JSON part, which I suspect is coming through the privilege channel, and then there's like what is the inner going to look like, and how dependent is it on that data that's coming from the tool. as when these things come together, right, that we get sort of that user interface experience. And when they come together, and I think how well they come together is going to be determined of, when you have a more or less successful MCP app.
I think the one thing that would be interesting to me, is that I don't think there's any restrictions on either the structured data or the user interface changing. So, normally when you have apps, there's a whole review process. Every time you make a change, there's a lot of checking and stuff that has to happen. And I don't believe there's so much checking on this. So, if you want to completely, and it needs to be flexible, right? If the data's changing, or if the UI wants, or the MCP wants to maybe provide something more detailed, it needs to provide more, different structure to the data. And so what I'm really getting at is that I think it's much easier to be more dynamic with this. And you don't have to be so rigid in terms of what you return. I mean, you can update it on the fly. So it's easy for OpenTable to create changes to it without having to go through a massive process. So you can do it much faster potentially. But I think, and that's the thing I think is going to be super interesting about this whole space is, by making it more and more dynamic. And I think this is some discussions we've had previously. You could get every question could become a different kind of UI or a different amount of structured data depending on what the context is. So it's going to be interesting to see what they've done, but it just feels like there's an opportunity there to really, provide a much more detailed service that's been possible before with the other way apps have been doing potentially.
Yeah, I would totally agree. I would just throw in one more thing in there, which is that, now we've shrunk it down to sort of see it as a widget, right? You no longer have the same design book you have for when you have control over the whole app, right? Because they're necessarily sitting inside somebody else's. Hopefully that gives a little bit more flexibility in terms of what we can display. But the other thing is we can look at this as basically being a Lego box that we're providing, and that is then getting built out dynamically based on the needs of that individual user, right? We all know that AI can create code, actually does that job really, really well. So to have the resource, right, that the which is the interface part itself, not be something that's programmed, but something that is meta-programmed, if you will, right? And then the AI is saying, oh, wait, hey, this is the thing that's going to be most useful for this particular context, I think is kind of what I'm looking for, is like the next turn of the wheel in terms of opportunity here. But even within that, those are simple apps.
No, I completely agree. I think this whole idea of deconstructing apps is going to be super powerful. And I think one opportunity is going to be going to like the App Store, finding very specific things in each of those apps, buying them, and then offering them as like a pennies in the pound kind of, every interaction you get a penny or something from that particular thing. And you could then generate a huge amount of traffic because people want that very specific feature. Because historically people have bundled a bunch of stuff together and made an app, but it's a huge thing. And people don't want that. Well, they don't need to have that anymore. I want that very specific thing. I want to sort of be able to locate, I don't know, cheese shops in this particular area, and only one person's got the data for that. That's not easy to get hold of. And offering that through a widget through a ChatGPT app is going to unlock some value. And I think there's going to be a lot more of that kind of thing going on. This deconstruction is really where I think people are going to need to start thinking about, because it's how your particular action fits into other actions is where you get exponential value from.
Cool. All right. Well, I mean, these are all lessons we can take from it. So, JC, can we find out what lessons OpenTable took away from it, and how things changed in your research?
Yeah, sure. And before, just to add on to the points that you raised, I think what is becoming clear to me is that yes, these companies or the developers behind these MCP apps today, they are still thinking the only way we know of building apps, which is basically we decide or delimit the UI that is going to be surfaced to the user, right? So that is what's happening. I'm understanding that is what's happening here in this app, for example, right? Like there's one specific UI or selection of UI widgets that it's going to be shown to the user, and the GPT app for OpenTable is restricted to showing just that. So what you're saying is there might be a whole different way of thinking about this in the coming months, years, that's going to completely change how we think about building apps and how we think about experiencing apps, right?
Absolutely.
It's very interesting.
Coming weeks.
And
true.
I didn't want to be too Optimistic, but yeah. Awesome. All right, so let's see what OpenTable ChatGPT app is looking like today, right? So again, there's a whole other discussion around auth and in MCP apps that we can leave for another session. But for now, I'm just starting from here. So we're gonna try and rerun the same flow. So I still wanna place a nice place for dinner tonight. So let's for dinner tonight. Let's see what it does. Right. So here we see right away the main difference, right? So what we were saying before, which is OpenTable just surfacing the UI widget right away. What was the name for that information, Ray? You mentioned that the AI is getting privilege information.
Right. The privileged channel, like if it's not also being sent to the AI, right? So there's like some stuff the tool can send just to the widget, and then there's stuff the tool sends to the widget and to the AI. And I was wondering, I was thinking maybe they were using that first one, that privileged channel, because I was seeing nothing come to the AI after that.
Right. So now we see the AI is actually narrowing down and actually talking to me, right? So it's trying to understand. It knows there's there's some parameters that it needs in order to show me before deciding to show me the UI, right? So which city are you in and for what time and how many people? All right. So before we go on, what do you think changed here from in the app, inside the app? What do you think is the change they made?
Well, it looks like they probably are using more of a traditional tool structure, right? That is then interacting with the AI, because this looks like the kind of thing we do with MCP without having a MCP UI or MCP apps aspect to it. And they're probably holding off on saying let's show a widget, because it's not time to show the widget yet. They need information before they can show you something that'll be useful in the widget, which I think is cool, because like the kind of question they're asking is not a question that is best answered through user experience, right? We talked before about how the precision can be good user experience stuff, but like we're just trying to cast a wider net. Hey, where are you, and how big a party is this? Like this is the kind of thing that like we probably try to do in the UI and lose people as they try to make a decision or navigate your map or whatever. If you just say I'm in Barcelona, it figures it out, right? Which is sort of nice. It can use the vagueness of text to its advantage to then get you where you want to go. And I think that becomes a key aspect of this, right? When do you want to bring the UI to the party, and when does text work a lot better for you for the decision-making process?
Definitely. That's what we've been seeing in these other examples of the other GPT apps, right? Like the best apps, they surface a combination of both, so it really works for the end goal of the user. So, all right. So far, so good. I'm gonna say I'm in Barcelona for tonight PM. 2 people. Let's see. I think at this point I would be expecting the UI to pop up. So of course now there's a conscious decision. The app is deciding to show the UI at this point because it has enough information, as we were saying, and I think it's a good moment. I think it makes sense. I would probably. Well, I stand corrected. Maybe I would have liked to narrow down the area a bit more. So these places, they happen to be close to where I live, but it could be that they are like 2 hours away, right? So maybe there was some more narrowing down that it needed to do before committing to the UI. But this already looks better, right? So I'm gonna try and follow our flow here. So I wanted to narrow down the type of food, right? So I don't think I said, right, I just said a nice place for dinner. It's not asking me, which is another parameter that you should know from the user, what am I looking for? So am I looking for Italian or Indian or So I think
And it's giving you really expensive options as well, right?
yeah, good point.
It's trying to get you to make it more expensive.
And also, and I wonder if it's biased. How is the bias the app is working with? Because it seems to be. So this is what I would suggest to someone who's not Spanish, right? It's showing tapas or Spanish food, but I mean, I live here. I don't want to go for tapas. I might want to go for Indian or whatever.
Sure.
So I think it might also have a bias that I don't know how well these apps are going to be able to handle. But
it would be interesting to know what it put in, because I wonder how much of context it knows about you that it adds in sometimes.
Right.
I mean, these are, I guess these are places that you haven't been to before or have chosen. I'm just wondering if, because sometimes obviously it knows stuff about you, and I wonder if any part of that's coming from there, because it's interesting that they're both places near you, potentially.
Yeah. And well, as we were talking, something interesting also happened. It just updated the places. So I don't know if it's listening to us but so it just refreshed the list. I don't know how or why, but okay.
That's
Let
interesting.
me try to narrow down the cuisine type. So I'm gonna go. I want to try a new Indian restaurant. Okay, so this is another interesting a glitch probably. So I'm not able. It seems like the app is still processing, which might explain why it kept updating without me prompting it to. But it seems like it's still working, and I cannot. So if I cannot click. Okay.
That's a good point. And this is also where these things get a little stuck, right? You could just be dealing with a glitch.
Yeah. So I
That
think
happens a lot of demos.
yeah, correct. So I think we are gonna be stuck here.
Do you want to start again?
Let's try just doing
Yeah.
a refresh of the page, maybe. Yeah.
Sorry?
Let's do a refresh of the page. Let's see if we can
Yeah.
break out.
Before we do that, I do suspect that it is only making a decision to show either text or UI. That's what it seems from here. So it has improved in the way of it
Yes.
is showing text, but it's not showing this combination of text that explains the UI, which is something that we've seen, for example, in Photoshop or Canva,
Yeah.
which is a good choice usually.
Sure. Well, this comes up in best practices too. The folks at OpenAI encourage, and I think we're now seeing why they encourage to not use the privileged channel unless absolutely necessary, because it's the whole point is to have it flow together, and when we get out of that, there's much more opportunity to get stuck.
Yeah.
It's still processing, right?
So yeah, it looks like it's still processing. So it did listen to my request, and it gave me actually a couple of good options. So
yeah, well, let's try picking one of them. I wonder whether what we have is whether this is a human in the loop thing.
All right, so let's first look at what happened before when I tried to commit. So at this point, I'm clicking here, and what happened, which is fairly expected, is that they punched me out to the website. So let's see now. So I'm gonna book for 8 p.m. Okay.
Yeah, they're punching you out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is fair. I mean, I think that makes sense. Is this is our defer area where the app is usually, well, basically deferring handing off the action to either their app or in this case their website.
Yeah.
So I mean, the only thing is that this seems like a bit disconnected from my experience before. So I mean, probably there's also an opportunity here. Sorry?
No, please continue. You're doing great.
I was going to say maybe there's an opportunity here to actually fill in the information that the app knows about the user. So going back to what we were saying about my taste preferences or whatever, like that's probably again, I think there's an opportunity in the defer or handoff side of things to make the app work really well. Oh, okay.
So it timed out, and then it gave you some text. That's interesting.
So I think it's timing out because it's like stuck on a, it's waiting for something to happen. Probably like this is an inadvertent human in the loop, wait. And then, so it's trying to hold up the execution of the tool until you've done something. But I don't think there's anything for you to do because all those kind of eject. And then we could also see, if we actually go back over the OpenTable page, we can see part of its challenge with being able to move forward for you is the fact that it's not authenticated, right? So you can sort of see how it wants you to sign in using your phone number, whatever. And I think we're going to find in the future that like authentication becomes an interesting challenge in these, right? Because you have your relationship with OpenAI. Obviously, you're coming in as an OpenAI user, right? When you're using an OpenAI app, and same things can be true for Claude apps, right? Which now exist, et cetera. But what's your relationship with OpenTable, right? And Toby and I have had multiple conversations before about like the challenges of like dealing with authentication and MCP, and like looking at it in terms of in-band versus out-of-band. And like I have an easy time imagining that part of the challenge here is it wants to do things for you, but it doesn't quite know how, right? And what it needs to do is be able to authenticate you, probably in-band. And then that's where it's stuck, is that because it can't associate this thing with you, it can't really do more on your behalf. And probably is trying to do some stuff. And I mean, this is all, a complicated zone. But this, hey, we're getting you to a certain point and then ejecting you might potentially get the job done. Although ideally, it should not kill the chat. But I think what we should also be looking for as we're doing more of these is like who is good at ejecting and who's good at keeping it inside the flow. Because if we can get this done agentically, I mean, really what I would love to do is I say, oh, I see those three things. You know what? The Indian place sounds good.
Yeah.
Right? Because not only might I want to type it, but like if we go back to the ChatGPT, interface for a second here, I think that the key opportunity is like that microphone, right? Being able, especially like we consider like doing mobile or what have you, like being able to express yourself, just make this thing happen for me. I mean, how many people are using this stuff, actually just talking to it can be super, super valuable. And now it can have the visual combined with being able to express yourself, right? How many times have you done that like with Siri, right? Or using like the Amazon Show, which is sort of built on that same kind of principle on a simpler basis. And then how could we be doing more of that here?
Definitely.
But this is super cool, dude. And it's cool to see them growing. It's cool to see them, still not quite there. And I think it sort of gives us an opportunity to be looking at some of these apps and say, hey, let's do 1 month later, review for some of these things. And like, what does their growth teach us about like where this whole space is going, and like what are the broader principles? And that's been a great part of the conversation we've had so far here today. I think this is the first time we're sort of talking about agentic apps, right? Even more than just like, hey, we're having a little bit of UI sort of popping out here. Where, it's like, how can we start to get work done? And that's really exciting. Thank you so much for sharing today.
Thank you, guys.